now it's time for the greatest part of today, someone who is already doing something great in this town. It's Ellen, and she's going to talk to us about treasure. So welcome to the stage, Ellen.
Hi, everybody. I am also socially awkward, so bear with me. I need to soak up some of your stage presence. Teach me how you do that. Yelling. Okay, I also need to learn how to yell, so it's gonna be a moment. Yeah, my name is Ellen Schlabach. A little bit about me: I'm a painter, I'm a quilter, as of Monday, I'm now the development manager at Turnip Green Creative Reuse. My background is in visual arts education. I had originally set out to be a middle school art teacher. I never actually made it to the school system, but I taught in after-school settings for many, many years. So, yeah. I'm also an avid hiker, I'm a gardener, I'm a forager. My relationship with the outdoors, with earth, with nature is very, very important to me. And lastly, I'm an anti-capitalist. I'm a sustainability professional. And despite those facts, I really, really, really love my stuff. A few years ago, I put a new engine in my 2003 Subaru Forester because it is the only car that really actually feels like me. I have shelves in my house that are lined with trinkets from my travels, and I'm obsessed with my 70s velvet couch that I found on Facebook Marketplace for $80. Maybe just saying I love my stuff sounds superficial, and maybe it feels incongruent with the other facts that I've stated about myself, but let's be honest, I'm a 29-year-old nonprofit professional, and it is increasingly challenging for me to feel a sense of ownership over my life, right? The climate is obviously concerning. It is unfortunately very rare that I feel like the things that matter to me are represented in politics. My paycheck is eaten up by living expenses, and I'm pretty uncertain that I will ever own a home. So I am going to come home to my rental at the end of the day, and I'm gonna lay on my gold velvet couch, and I'm gonna be surrounded by real, tangible objects that remind me that my life is, in fact, mine. These things are my treasures, and I see myself reflected in them. I think I know, because I experience it, that there's a guilt that comes with the rise of consumerism. There's this belief that loving things is inherently shallow. And today it's my intention to kind of challenge that belief and explore the idea that by forging deeper, more lasting relationships with the things that we own, we can help create a balance in a culture of overconsumption. Before I speak on how I came to believe this, I'm gonna kind of be a history nerd and kind of throw some statistics at you and get a little doomy and gloomy, but I do promise that I will circle back to a more positive place, right? Because I can recognize that the hunger for beautiful things can really feel insatiable. I know that at some point, we've each felt a desire to purchase something that is so great that it overpowered us. And then we come home and the clothing just doesn't quite fit, or the decor doesn't match the vibe, or the tool, you didn't end up using it in the kitchen as much as you thought it would. And you're what was I thinking? Right? You're filled with buyer's remorse. Or even if you like it, in a few months, you're this feels dated. Or worse, it's starting to fall apart. And so you go back and you go to the store and you do it again and again and again. And I want to be clear that this cycle of desiring, purchasing, and discarding things is not like a personal flaw. It was entirely manufactured. And this is the history nerd part. The technological revolution of the late 1800s and early 1900s brought about a huge increase in industrial productivity. Chain stores boomed, and goods that were once handmade became standardized and mass-produced. This larger supply meant greater affordability, and working-class citizens could now enter the market as mass consumers. To address this new spending power and this increase in choices, companies targeted consumers with advertising. From 1880 to 1920, money spent on advertising increased from 200 million to around 3 billion, which is crazy to me because I didn't really know there were $3 billion in 1920. And in 1924, then Secretary of Commerce Herbert Hoover gave an address to the Associated Advertising Clubs of the world, stating, "In the past, wish, want, and desire were the motive forces in economic progress. Now you have taken over the job of creating desire. In economics, the torments of desire in turn creates demand, and from demand we create production, and thence round the cycle we land with increased standards of living." End quote. There's no denying that the standard of living has improved over time, but more often than not, the companies which sell us products and the advertising agencies that market to us do not have our interests at heart. In the early 1900s, advertising was heavily used to homogenize an immigrant working class, encouraging them to discard their culture and history for a flashy new American life. The American Association of Foreign Language Newspapers was formed to distribute advertising, and a 1918 article sings that this organization was unifying the various elements dwelling within the United States and helping to instill in them a sense of gratitude for the hospitality employed here and an intense feeling of loyalty to American ideals. So yeah, how do we unite people to feel a sense of belonging and purpose? We convince them to buy shit. And this never stopped, right? Like, we continue to fill our voids by shopping. The result of this has obviously been disastrous on many fronts. On a personal level, we've all kind of gained this gnawing sense that we would be happier if we just had the next best thing. Personally, I'm currently eyeballing a New Works jumpsuit, despite the fact that I already have like 3 perfectly fine jumpsuits and I really don't need another one. I also really want a Le Creuset saucepan, and I really can't, I don't know why. They're so beautiful, exactly. I think it's the colors. I really think it's the colors. Yeah, you guys get it, right? I have larger goals financially. I would like to save money, but I really also just want the hit of dopamine that a fresh package on my porch brings. I need something to look forward to at the end of the day, and mail does it. And yeah, on a larger scale, our planet is drowning in our excess. The United States has over 3,000 active landfills, 10,000 closed landfills. Our residential landfill, which serves 34 or 36 counties, will be full in 5 to 10 years unless we expand. Historically, when that expansion has happened, it's happened onto the land of marginalized people, so that's obviously unacceptable. There's a plastic garbage patch twice the size of Texas floating in the Pacific Ocean. 11 million tons of textiles, mostly clothing, get sent to the landfill in the US each year. The average cell phone lifespan is only 2 to 4 years. And you can get on Facebook Marketplace every single day and find a dozen-year-old couches that are being discarded because people change their decor, and the one they've got just no longer fits the vibe. Okay. Thus concludes the doom and gloom portion of this speech. So thank you for bearing with me. I promise I'm about to get more uplifting, okay? So yeah, I work at Turnip Green Creative Reuse. Has anybody been there? Oh my God, I love to hear it. Some of y'all work there, so, and some of y'all didn't raise your hand, you weirdos. So yeah, Turnip Green is a little slice of magic that's like somewhere between a Goodwill and a recycle bin. We take like all the stuff that has nowhere else to go and would normally be considered waste. So think like broken crayons and fabric scraps and leftover tiles and tangled up pieces of yarn and all the other stuff that like could be something really wonderful, but right now it's just stuff. The materials that we receive are diverted from the landfill, and community members can buy them from our 7,000 square foot warehouse space on a name your own price basis. If you haven't been to our new space, you need to check it out. It's incredible. We also turn these discarded materials into opportunity by offering workshops, after-school programs, and the opportunity to showcase work created with reused materials. Like Ray, they are going to be showing work at our pop punk market, or punk rock market. Pop punk is also cool. But it's not what that is. Like, the All-American Rejects are not going to be there. Anyway, the work that we do keeps these materials in circulation as useful items, and it helps us move towards a more circular economy. Are people familiar with the idea of a circular economy already? Whether you are or not, I'm still going to talk about it because I already planned to talk about it. So, brief overview. Right now, we live primarily in a linear economy, right? So we're inputting raw materials, we're inputting labor, we're inputting energy, we're creating a bunch of stuff. And then when that stuff has outlived its purpose life, we discard it or it outputs as waste, right? So, alternatively, in a closed loop system, nothing or nearly nothing reaches the point of becoming waste to discard. So rather than buying based on trends or updates, we make products that are made to last longer. And then once those things wear out, we repair it, or we reuse it, or if it must come down to it, we recycle it to be turned into new materials. Or ideally, the stuff we make is made out of natural materials that can rot and return to the earth. It's like the 5 R's, if you want to look into it later. But yeah, so in addition to being a treasure trove of like some seriously cool stuff, Turnip Green also serves to make that type of operating a little bit more attainable. As you can imagine, my job has really deepened my understanding of the waste crisis and really changed my relationship with stuff. I've always been a thrifter and a collector. My dad was an environmentalist, like long before people were cool with environmentalists. And most of the time, like my souvenirs from trips are like really cool rocks that I found. But That said, the sheer amount of very, very, very cool stuff that makes its way to Turnip Green really made me actually start to comprehend the volume of waste generated by our linear economy and our consumerist mentalities. Like, we get an average of 800 to 1,000 pounds of stuff every single day. Like, there are days when I am inundated by the sheer amount of things that we receive and the number of days that I have spent sifting through trash bags of the belongings of somebody's past mother-in-law every day really drove home the idea that discarding an item from your life does not make it disappear. Thanks. Despite this confrontation with the gravity of the situation, I'll be honest, I've found at times that the zero waste philosophy can get just like a little bit shamey, and I'm not a fan of a guilt trip. I also don't think it's always accessible for everybody to go and live a zero waste lifestyle. So I really don't want to be a mouthpiece for the individual solutions to systemic problems camp. Because we didn't choose to live in an era where the time and energy for making things by hand is short. We didn't implement planned obsolescence. We didn't ask for every fifth Instagram story to be a targeted ad. And we certainly didn't choose to start creating all affordable and accessible options out of cheap plastic. So if I was going to reduce my personal consumption, let alone go try and convince other people to reduce their personal consumption, it wasn't because I believe that we, the mostly working class, have an obligation to fix an environmental catastrophe that was manufactured by corporations. Not only is it just wildly unfair to think that way, it also just made me feel really, really hopeless. I can't fix it all. And also just most people don't operate based on a sense of imposed duty. We want to do things that feel right intuitively to us, But that said, I did want to reduce my consumption. And more importantly, I wanted to rid myself of the continuous gnawing desire to order things online when I get home at the end of the day, because it's not fun. I just also want reducing my consumption to feel good. Not because I feel like I have some moral high ground, but because it feels satisfying and rewarding and personally purpose-driven. I'm also just I'm not cut out to be a minimalist at all. And so I wanted to untangle the idea that stuff is just inherently bad. So yeah, all this, my love for my own things, reconciled with images of overfilling landfills and a dead woman's estate, it led me to the idea of viewing our personal material belongings not as purchases or as property, but as legacy. I was thinking about archaeologists uncovering items from the past. These treasures are revered and they're cherished. Historically, they've even been stolen from their culture of origin and sold to museums, placed on display behind thick glass and heat sensors. Anthropologists have spent countless hours poring over these artifacts, using them to piece together an understanding of our ancestors. These objects have, more often than not, held all the secrets of human history. And they're not even like special or valuable things, right? They're everyday items like kitchenware and clothing and jewelry, and yet they hold entire worlds within them. And I think that is so incredible. Like, it's so inspiring to me. And so, like, on that note, side note, inspiration, I explore this idea of like objects as an anthropological narrative a lot in my paintings. So I create like scenes of people just like living alongside the junk that you inevitably create. I think like the junk and the rubble and the trash in my work is not like a focal point. Like, you could overlook it in the same way that you overlook a styrofoam cup on the side of the road. But it is integral as the human subjects, because it depicts the material relics that we as individuals and as a species will leave behind when we're gone. So yeah, it took a lot to put what I'm getting at here today into words, but painting it helped sift through a lot of these big influences and ideas into something a little bit more easily consumable. So yeah, I was thinking about legacy, and I also thought about heirlooms, right? Furniture and dishware and linens passed down through generations of families. I thought about the stories they carried with them, the clinking of silverware during a lifetime of family holidays. The way that my great-great-grandmother's quilt became sun-faded from hanging on the wall at my aunt's house as my cousins and I ran up and down the stairs below it. I thought about the time that my mother broke the crystal vase that her mother gave to her that was passed down from her mother before. She had called my grandmother. She was apologetic because my family's historically Mennonite and we don't really have like nice crystal vases that often. Like, it's just not our thing. So my mom called and apologized, and my grandmother said simply, "It was made to be used. And you used it, and I used it, and my mother used it before. That's what it was made to do." All 29 years of my life, that grandmother has owned the same Victorian settee sofa, which means that that settee has held 4 generations of family butts. And I'm not being facetious when I say that I think that's like more than a little bit sacred. So yeah, suddenly I had found my motivation, right? That's the relationship that I want with my stuff. I want to eat off the dishware that my mother ate from when she got her first place. I want to sleep under the patched up quilt that was made by my grandfather's grandmother. I want to adorn myself and my home with art made by my friends. I don't want my emotional pick-me-ups or my sense of control or my bursts of happy chemicals to come from walks through Target. I want to be surrounded by the sacredness of my favorite butts on my couch. I don't want archaeologists in the future to dig up my stuff in the landfill and find a timeline of seasonal fashion trends, personified by piles of polyester clothing. By the time my favorite sweater wears thin, I hope it holds a lifetime of memories and adventures and errands. See that patch, I'll say? That's where it ripped on a branch during a hike in Oregon with my best friend. See that stain? I was making blackberry jam. That's not homely to me, that's history. Once I realized this, it didn't take long for this mindset to kick in and start shaping my decisions. I'd go to the store and I'd find something that I thought I wanted and I'd second guess it because I think, do I see myself reflected in this? Like, do I actually see myself reflected in this? And most of the time, the answer was like, no. However, unlike my previous attempts to minimize my environmental footprint by just doing without for the sake of minimizing my environmental footprint, this line of thinking allowed room for me to say yes. And because I wasn't just impulse buying crap, just to like buy crap, I actually had like at least a little bit of money to spend on things that actually mattered to me. So like, yeah, I'll buy the 200 pair of jeans that make my butt look real good. Because I'll wear them for years to come. And yeah, I can buy a handmade ring made by my friend Jerry on a trip to New Mexico. Because every time I wear it, I'll be reminded of the hours I spent listening to stories in his studio. And yeah, I can take home this weird, mysterious mask that the old man found in his garage and donated to work, and he doesn't know where it came from, which is amazing to me, because like, how could you not know where this mask came from? You'll see it later. Yeah, the mask makes everyone laugh, and if ever my time with it ends, I'll take it back to turnip green, and it'll make somebody else's friends laugh too. Yeah, it wasn't that I set out to be mindful of my consumption. I had just begun to start to think like an anthropologist. What story do my belongings tell about me? And do I actually identify with that story? Simply by loving and cherishing my things, I had begun a subconscious audit of my home, determining what made each treasure feel special. In doing so, I noticed patterns, and these patterns led me to a very short and simple set of principles. A personal definition of treasure to weigh each future purchase against. Here's the story that I discovered. And yeah, this is like totally just a few favorite things that I snapped photos of last night, not at the last minute. And that is the mask that the man, I'm like, how do you not know where that mask came from? Like, it's just in your garage? Anyway, what treasure means to Ellen. 1, I love handmade items. As an artist, there are few things more precious than those that were created by another human being's hands. They are inherently filled with the story of their creator. So as my mugs break, I replace them with handmade ceramics. And when guests stay over, they sleep under quilts. When my things aren't handmade, I prefer to buy things that are ethically made when I can. Again, if I think that items hold the story of their creator, then like I'd really prefer not to wear clothing or use goods that are produced with unfair labor. 2, I want my things to last. I had realized that almost all of my favorite belongings were made many decades ago, inherited from family or found secondhand. I'm not having kids. Like, if you know me at all, then you know I'm very serious about not having kids. But when I die, I still want my things to be of value to somebody else. And hopefully somebody else after that, and like, actually hopefully somebody else after that too, until the end of time. So on that line, I avoid buying plastic stuff, because even though it wasn't made to hold up, it was made to last forever. And I would rather, I hope that whatever belongings end up discarded by me are able to return to the earth eventually. 3. I know how to count. I want my stuff to be timeless. Trends are exhausting, and I don't want to be caught dead in one. I can't afford to buy new stuff all the time, and I also can't bear to look at a dated closet. Like, I want my things to last, but I still want them to be stylish and cool the whole time they are lasting. Like maybe this is shallow, but I want people now, I want people 20 years ago, and I want people 100 years into the future to say, wow, I like your sense of style. Like, 4, I'm a sucker for quirky stuff. I think people think of timelessness as like simple, but timeless is also the stuff that's so weird that you really can't be sure that it ever fit in to begin with. Like, I work at Turnip Green, as you all know and I've said 1,000 times. And while I've reined in my hoarder desire to rescue every single misfit toy, there are some things that are just so out there that I feel obligated to continuously bear witness to their absurdity. 5, last one, I like my things to be filled with memories. This ties in again with the idea of wanting things to be long-lasting. I want to see life in my stuff, memories of summers on my cheap beach towel with friends, odds and ends picked up on my travels. Even memories that aren't mine hold weight, which has helped me to see a lot of value in secondhand stuff. I really like the mystery of multiple lives living in one shirt or set of cups. And that's it, really. I felt like this survey of my treasure felt right. I felt that I was reflected in these ideals. And ironically, when I got down to it, the majority of the objects that I love and the majority of objects that I desire the most are those with the least amount of environmental impact anyway. Because handmade artisan goods use less invasive production methods and are often distributed within small local economies, which reduces the greenhouse gases needed for transportation. Long-lasting, timeless items stay in use and out of the landfill, which reduces consumption and waste. Items made with natural materials are less dependent on extensive production chains and can safely return to the earth after you're done with them. And I just want to add that, I know that ethically made, quality material products are unfortunately, generally, a heck of a lot more expensive. And they're not realistic standards for everybody. They're not even realistic standards for me all the time, and I don't hold myself to this as law, because I don't really like laws all that much anyway. But I've also never lived outside the lowest fully employed tax bracket, and most of my most valuable goods were found secondhand. And my ceramic plates that I've eaten so many beautiful meals off of now, they were secondhand, and they're still gonna hold up longer in the dishwasher than a set of new plastic ones that would probably be the same price. I could give a whole nother talk about the stigma around secondhand goods and where that comes from and how screwed up it is, but I'll skip that and just say that buying used products epitomizes the circular economy that we talked about earlier. All this to say that in the end, I really, really didn't need the guilt. I didn't need the zero waste ethics or a moral obligation to reduce my environmental footprint. It just felt like me. With 7 billion people come 7 billion identities, priorities, personalities, and desires. And for that reason, I can say with 100% certainty that my personal checklist for what qualifies for treasure is going to differ from yours. However, I think the concept is transferable. Whether we like it or not, the stuff we leave behind tells our story and acts as our legacy. By exploring what that means to us personally, by viewing our belongings as an extension of ourselves, and by breaking down what it is about our most favorite things that makes them so valuable to us, it becomes so much easier to differentiate true desire from that which was manufactured for us. In short, I don't think that the path towards reduced consumption involves dutifully depriving ourselves of worldly goods because it's the right thing to do. Instead, I believe that by deepening our expectations for our belongings' capacity for personal fulfillment, our rate of consumption simply decreases. Because when your coat is your favorite coat, in which you feel more comfortable and more confident than anything else you wear, you just don't really want a new coat next year. And when all of your favorite butts are sitting on your couch, it always fits the vibe. And so with that, it is my hope for you and for me and for all people to come. Eventually, may all that we own be treasure.
What if I don't know how to make things by hand? Does Turnip Green have any cool classes?
How did you know? Yes, Turnip Green has so many super cool classes. We have kids classes on Thursdays. We have sewing classes. We have printmaking classes. We've got a really sick printing press that we're starting to use more of, etching press. So yeah, if you don't know how to make cool stuff, you can come learn how, or you can also just shop and get stuff and try things out, because it's a lot easier to try things out when you just paid what you could pay rather than like what Joann Fabrics charges. That's like how I learned to sew, is because I worked at Turnip Green, and so I could just get fabric there instead of spending all my money on new yardage. We have our gallery space. We show a different artist every month. The art in the gallery has to be at least largely made out of reused materials. We have like an artist marketplace. We also have opportunities for artists to teach classes to the community, like paid opportunities. There's opportunities for artists to join our teaching artists team and teach after school programs every once in a while. And we just like love to talk to people about what they're doing. Like, if you're excited about a project and you come to Turnip Green and you're like, I'm looking for this, and we're like, okay, cool, why? And you go on a spiel about what you're making and like the nonsense behind it, like, we will listen. We love to hear that stuff. So yeah, there's a ton of ways to plug in. Just come and see what's happening. You can follow us on Instagram, Turnip Green Creative Reuse, every day or about every day. We post our hottest, sexiest items that have been donated. We will make you race in. We don't hold items. And you can also just find out more about opportunities that we're offering and ways to get connected. Our Instagram is super up to date, thanks to Callaway. So, sweet.